What's going on, guys? This is Martyrs Brigade 99 coming to you once again with another session of Dark Souls PvP. Alright guys, this is the third and final installment of the series, and basically, hey, as I've said before, we still trying to figure it out, man. I mean, why in the world would you need dexterity when you have strength, right? Because in other words, once one of you guys figure it out, please tell me. Right? Once you figure it out, please tell me. Because just as some can be successful with a dexterity build, many of us can be equally successful with a strength build, right? And when I say strength, I'm not talking about just relegating the strength weapons to Manserpent Greatsword or, you know, a Zweihander, right? And this is why in the brigade we try to get as proficient as we can in using mini weapons. Because one thing that I have started to do, at least recently, you know, when guys kind of contact me, they're like, hey dude, let's just have a series of matchups, one-on-one. What I try to do is not limit my weapon usage to just one weapon, right? Because I've had some guys, you know, they'll say something like, well, I mean, the only reason why you're doing it is because you're good with the with weapon X, you know, for example. And in other words, if you were to substitute weapon X for weapon Y, you wouldn't be as successful. I've actually had guys say that to me a few times. So my thing is, I said, okay, you know what I'll do? I'll just kind of go on my lone mission of trying to get successful, well, actually trying to get proficient at using a myriad of weapons. So whenever I find myself in 1v1 matchups, and I'm not talking about summons, like sitting in the bird, nor am I talking about invasions. I'm talking about somebody like, hey dude, let's do a rumble in the jungle, battle of the bills, let's do a series. Well, I just want to mix it up, right, to kind of demonstrate my diversity of weapon usage. And that's kind of like a personal thing I've done for myself, because I think far too many times you'll find somebody who is good with one or two weapons, and basically that's all you ever see them using. You know, that can also be said, well, let's just say strategies, you know. You'll have some people who, let's just say, they're only good with the Darkwood Grain Ring, right? But if they were to fight under circumstances that did not allow Darkwood Grain Ring, their game is more than likely lost, right? So I think diversity with regard to PvP strategies, tactics, weapons, you know, and whatnot, it's a good thing. So at this point, I mean, if I needed to use the Darkwood Grain Ring, I'm good. If I was in a fight club or something that said, well, dude, you can only do medium roll only, hey, I get practice with the medium roll, I'm good, right? I don't feel uncomfortable. You know, if I'm in a fight club or a tournament or competition or something, they say, hey, dude, fast rolls only, I'm good. You want to know why? Because I do not relegate my game to only one or two things. Right? If I were in a fight club and they say, hey, no katanas, I wouldn't feel handicapped, right? Because I'm good with katanas. I'm also good with great swords. I'm also good with strength weapons. I'm also good with halberds. And that's only because I've taken the time to practice with all these different variety of weapons, which I think is good. Now, I'm not saying that it is not good if you find one weapon of choice and you stick with it. I'm not saying that, right? So I know some of you honor police out there. Don't try to say that I'm putting down people and is a demonstration of my moral character and that I'm bankrupt of character, you know, all these things that you elitist people try to say to me. No, dude. This is a standard that I set for myself, right? Nobody else. I'm not attacking anybody. You know, for some of you guys who say, you should respect your subscribers. Some of these comments, dude, I swear it's like a joke, like, right? Respect for subscribers. When don't I, dude? Right? Just when don't I? Anyway, enough of that. Now, this is the crap. Now, I want you guys to notice something. Now, the guy backed off, all right, to allow me to fight the good old Black Knight guy. But if you notice, he's trying to pick me off with the dragon bows. Dragon great bow, I think that is. Now watch what he do. Just watch him. He's bowing. And see, this is why I don't get hung up over bows. Right? A lot of you honor dudes out there, I mean, I've even read your statements. You know, you'll say something like, well, I come from Demon Souls. And in Demon Souls, you know, we had honor. And because we had honor, we like to carry that to Dark Souls. And it's just, you know, just no honorable people. You know, we bowed all the time. The game's broken, you know. And I'm like, dude, first off, whether you bow or not has nothing to do with honor. It just basically doesn't mean anything. Right? Because in other words, let's just use the argument that bowing is a sign of honor. Or whatever you call it. Good sportsmanship, right? Because I've even heard somebody say, oh, you're not a good sportsman. First off, this is not a sport. This is a video game, number one, okay? And in other words, well, actually, it depends on how you define sport, right? Because in other words, if you define sport as a form of competition, then, I mean, you can almost call anything a sport. Because many people compete on levels, right? Because in other words, people compete on the workplace, right? But I doubt that people would call an occupation a sport, right? So I guess it kind of depends on how you define a sport, whether you would say that this, you know, is, you know, sportsman-like behavior, according to what the person has said. But anyway, the point that I'm getting at is, to the extent that these so-called mannerisms are supposed to be an indicator of something, you will find far too many times that people's behavior are not consistent with what they say, or what they say these deeds are supposed to represent. Case in point, this guy, I guess he's an honor dude because he bowed. But if you're such an honor dude and you see me fighting somebody else, then why would you try to pick me off with bows? In other words, is it honorable for you to bow? And also honorable for you to try to pick me off with bows when you see me in a 1v1 that you have voluntarily disengaged the battle? In other words, if you're going to fight me 2v1, fight me 2v1. But don't try to come across like you some kind of hotshot moralist by stepping off, but then you're trying to pick me off with arrows. Come on, dude. I mean, be one or the other. Either be an honor dude in the honor brigade, or just be a regular player that you play by your own rules. I would actually rather the latter than to be a hypocrite of the former. And this is why in the brigade we play by our own rules. Right? So when these people kind of come to me with their rules, thinking that Sir Martyrs is going to abide by them. No, dude, I have my own rules. I'm not a sheep, right? I don't care who did what in any game. I play by what I consider to be right or wrong. Because in other words, I do not believe that, I'm not an absolutist. I've read comments where guys will say, well, you're not a good player because, you used humanity, right? Now, they won't say anything about me fighting 3 guys. They'll just say, because I used humanity, that's against the Honor Brigade code. But guess what, dude? I'm not an absolutist. In other words, most things are conditional, not constant. So, in a 1v1, somebody's kind of playing fair and all like that. Will I hit the, no, in most cases I won't. If I think you're using cheap tactics and you're ticking me off, I might. But in a lot of cases I won't, because it's only a video game. I'll just probably utter some curse words to myself or something like that. I don't even send hate messages. You really have to do something dirty for me to send you a hate message, which is very rare. It's not that deep. It's only a game. Right? Even though I have received those at times. Some people sending me messages. And actually, sometimes I might kind of get rude with them. Like, look, dude, you're not on my friend list. Don't send me no hate mail. Just take your loss and disappear. Right? So anyway, enough about that. I just think that was a classic example to demonstrate. Listen, dude, get off it. These formalities do not necessarily mean anything. And if you are a victim because you are assuming that these formalities mean something, it is not the other person's fault. It is your fault for assuming that everyone plays the way you do. Right, so that's my stance in the brigade for all of you guys that are real team. because I've had some new subscribers say, "Dude, why don't you bow? You're just you're disrespectful. You don't respect your opponents." First off, it's not about respect. Yeah, I mean, this is a game. This is not high school wrestling. Where you shake hands. That's real sportsmanship. That's not. You're playing a basketball game in college or something. You lose and you go up to your opponent and say, "Hey guys, good game." This is not chess. A game that I like probably as much as Dark Souls, where you lose and you're like, "Hey dude, good game." This is not that. This is a video game that basically the characters remove all personal relationships from. In other words, there's nothing personal about a character in the video game. There's no human element, right? So in other words, how can you add some type of personality traits to a character that does not have a human element? That's what I really don't understand. But it is what it is. We don't have to go into that. All right, the point of the conversation was basically to demonstrate that for all you guys that believe that some of these formalities mean something, if you fall a victim to it, it is your fault, in my opinion, because you should not assume that everyone thinks the way you do. Right? Decide to do whatever you're going to do at your own discretion, because that's what I do. Right? In other words, if I choose to bow and someone backstabs me, well, that's up to me, right? Because I should have made an assessment. Am I close enough to, in the event that the person kind of runs in for a backstab, am I close enough to where, he could backstab? Did I bow too close? Maybe I should have bowed further. Maybe I should have allowed my opponent to bow first and then went from there, instead of being the first person to bow, not knowing the other person's intentions. Right? So I really believe for a lot of you guys that get so ticked off because, somebody victimizes you during a bow, granted, you may not like it, but guess what? Do not assume that everyone thinks. Case in point, I see some guys in the forest. As a matter of fact, I think I'm going to have another forest video coming up sometime soon. And now, I'm by myself in the forest. I have two invaders. One just so happened to show up first. But there was another one out somewhere. And I'm ready to get it on because I know at any given moment somebody's going to attack me, right? In other words, I may find myself, engaged against one opponent, and then somewhere out of the blue you're going to get another one of these ridiculous forest guys coming out of the blue with a hornet ring or crystal crystal soul spear or something like that. I know it's coming. So look, he kind of walks up to me and he bows. So I kicks him, right? So after the match, he kind of went on a rant about how rude and mean I am and that he's unsubbing and all this other stuff because he tried to show respect and I kicked him. And I'm thinking to myself, like, this guy's not aware of the conditions that I'm under. And this is why I say that nothing is absolute. Things are conditional. In other words, had I not been in the forest, I may have gestured, and I may not bow, but I might gesture, give him a wave or something like that. But because of the conditions that I'm under, the great potential for me to get knocked off by two forest guys, my standards change. And this is why Sir Martyrs and everybody else in the brigade, we have our own rules that we go by. They're not absolute rules, they are conditional rules. Flasking, conditional. Waving and gesturing, conditional. Chain backstabbing, conditional. In a 1v1, will I chain backstab? Sure, in some cases. If you're popping divine blessings and I haven't healed, and I'm not doing anything, you're just kind of like a sore loser, dude, you're getting chained. Because in other words, why are you popping divine blessings? If, I'm fighting a 2v1 and I'm noticing that every time I'm, trying to, knock off your little comrades, you're just flasking it up, basically giving them near infinite health. hey, I'm chain backstabbing somebody. Because in other words, I am not going to die with these absolutist principles without giving myself a chance to accomplish the mission, which is kill all at the expense of them and not myself. Now, some of you guys can some of you little moralist, elitist guys, you can die with your little morals, right in a 3v1, but I'm not, dude. If I catch you just popping off Estes over and over and over, and I don't get upset. I know you're trying to survive. I know there's a lot of dirty players. I mean, hence the name Dark Souls. So I'm not into this thing to where, I just get frustrated because all the dirty players. No, I expect it, right? I don't have any high expectations. No, this is Dark Souls. And not only that, people have different interests. Case in point, the first rule of nature is self-preservation, right? Now, of course, when I say nature, I'm not saying that this is natural. But it's still a form of self-preservation by not wanting to die. There's nothing wrong with that. Especially when you have Lloyd's talismans. Now, if you're using divine blessings or something else like that, hey, you're getting chained, dude. But, you Estes it up. Do I really get upset? I don't really get upset. Why? Because if I fail to bring a Lloyd's talisman, then that's my fault. It is my fault that I failed to bring Lloyd's talisman. Not your fault that I expected you to live by a standard, or not live, but play by a standard that I have for myself and assume that you also play by the same rules. I don't believe in that. I hear so many guys who they'll say, oh my God, look how cheap he is. He did this and he did that. And I'm thinking to myself, like, why would you expect anything different? I mean, is this a fight club? In other words, is this a tournament? I mean, were there any, pre-established rules? And if they were not, then why did you have any expectations, right? Just because you see someone gesture. That's kind of like a failure of an imagination, right? I don't think that a gesture means anything. I just think a gesture is a gesture. In other words, just like my grandfather used to say, just because something glitters doesn't make it gold. Right? Because in other words, if you thought there was value in everything that glittered, why, good night. You'd be fooled by some of everything, right? Alright, so enough ranting about having expectations for people outside of fight clubs, outside of tournaments, and outside of any other prearranged 1v1 match. Right? Because, just recently I fought this guy. He invited me to a series of matches. And actually, I was eating this guy alive, right? So I pull out my handy dandy, and actually this was a console. I pull out my handy dandy painted guardian sword, and I basically bled that guy out. Just about. He was almost dead. As a matter of fact, he bled out like 1,000 or 1,100 total damage. So he pops a divine blessing. And I'm thinking to myself, like, dude, you invite me to a series of 1v1 and you're popping divine blessings? Like, really? This is not an invasion. This is none of that. And this guy had the audacity to tell me, chill out, dude, it's just a game. So I say, okay. So I didn't say anything. So I say, okay, well, it's just a game, huh? Well, I'm about to go downtown Julie Brown on this guy. And I went to town on that guy. So much so that he said, oh, you're just a hotshot because you have armor on. So I took off my armor, ate that guy alive again. He got so upset to where he said, well, you're mean, you're dishonorable, I'm unsubbing. Okay, dude. The point that I'm getting at is, no one should make any assumptions about any given player if you do not know them or if there are no established rules. And this is why in most cases when people want to set up a series of 1v1s, I usually tell them the same thing every time. Listen, dude, we can 1v1. My rules are no pinwheels, no hornet's rings. Everything else is pretty much allowed after that. In other words, I don't take for granted that they're going to think the same way as me. Right? In other words, I don't tell them no chain backstabs. But guess what? Best believe when I play them, I assume that they are going to try. And as long as you make the assumption that anything is possible within a match, you should always be prepared. So this is why I think the person who plays with the least amount of rules is probably the most prepared, right? Because when you take for granted that somebody is not going to chain backstab you, you will never almost, in other words, avoiding chain backstabs will never become a standard practice in your PvP. In most cases, I behave like if I see somebody coming around me, even though they may not have the intent to do it, I always escape as if they are, right? Because I don't take any player for granted. All right, so I think that's enough ranting about a myriad of topics in all three videos. I hope you guys enjoyed the showcase of the strength weapon. And look at this guy. This is the kind of people that get on my nerves. Now, you notice this? You know, I kind of break this guy off a little bit. He's inflicted with poison and all that, so I guess he figured to himself, well, I'll go ahead and give me a B plan, right? B plan, meaning let me go where the mob of enemies are. Popping divine blessings and all that. I mean, I saw it. You know, he can't try to deny that he didn't see it because he know he did and he shouldn't have, right? But guess why I don't get upset? I have no expectations for this dude. I don't know him. Right? So, especially with him being a dark wraith, I don't expect anything other than him being the biggest prick that he can. Right? So this is why not much gets to me. Right? I mean, it's very rare that I get rage because I don't have any expectations. Right? So for a lot of you guys that rage quit and all that and get all pissed off and bowing and all like that, listen. Here's my prescription for you. Have zero expectations for no one. Well, actually, zero expectations for everyone. I'll put it that way. Alright, guys. I hope you enjoyed the series. Martyrs Brigade is out.